Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of ConocoPhillips. Thank you very much for your invitation to join you here today to speak on your Global Safety Conference. My subject today is safety culture and empowerment, but let me first introduce myself. My name is Bruce Staley. I'm a safety management consultant, but I spent most of my working life in coal mines. I'm a mining engineer, originally by profession, and spent 24 years 900 meters below the ground in the dark. My family for 300 years, maybe more, worked in coal mines. But let me tell you a little bit about what I do today. I consult around the world in high risk and labor intensive industries. I work in coal mining still, shipbuilding, iron and steel, railways, major construction, heavy engineering, power generation, nuclear power, chemicals. I even work for 2 zoo companies, and I specialize in tiger, rhinoceros, gorilla and elephant. I also work for the oil industry. I work for most of the super majors, some of the mid-sized oil companies, many of the national oil companies around the world as well, for the drilling companies and the service companies. And though as a company we advise governments in 2 or 3 different countries for vastly different reasons, we advise judges in high courts, but they were all mining disasters. We spend most of our time training, coaching, advising leadership, helping leaders with a better understanding of this subject, helping them gain knowledge and eventually then develop the skills which enable those leaders to be much more effective in moving safety to the next level of performance. Now, my subject matter today is safety culture and the empowerment of a workforce. And just going back to the statement I made earlier about my family being 300 years in coal mines, well, I started underground just before I was 18. My father started underground when he was 14. My grandfather started underground when he was 9 years of age. That's when he started work. In a country which at the time was as civilized as anywhere else, and people at the age of 9 were sent underground. Probably the most dangerous work environment you could ever find, and they were employing children. Tells you something a little bit about culture. Now, the word culture, to understand maybe better what I'm going to be speaking about for the next 45 minutes or so, to understand that word, there are many different definitions of that word, and the one that I hold and keep in my mind breaks down a culture into 5 words. Now, culture is all about people. It's got nothing to do with anything else but people. And so it talks to the behaviors of people, the attitudes, the competencies, the perceptions and the values of those people, shared behaviors, competencies, attitudes, values and perceptions. And so if we were then to compare one culture with another, then we would in some way assess those under those 5 different parameters and then bring those together to make some comparisons to how one culture might differ from another. It may be a national culture, it may be a company culture, it might be an industry culture, it might be a sporting culture, comparing, in my country, a cricket team with a football team, the one that you kick with your foot. Okay, so why is that critical for us to talk about it on a conference? A conference about safety. Why is culture such an important word today? Over the years, we've challenged the safety problem in different ways. Historically, if you look back through history, originally our approach was through engineering, maybe the first 150 years. If you look at the history of industry for the first 150 years, you'll see industry concentrating so much upon the engineering of safety. There was a lot of need for it. Tremendous amount of need. There was the guard and the physical barrier that stopped people falling or coming into contact with energies. And then they became more and more sophisticated. Okay? And if you look out on the roads today, you will see, as I came along I-10, which comes through Houston, which is not far away from these offices today. And when I look at the road today, I see the engineering of safety. I see the great road, level and smooth and straight, a good long curves and barriers and lights and drainage. I see the engineered car, big and strong, and airbag, ABS, seat belt, rollover protection, all the engineering you could ever want. And then maybe you look at my country. on the road there, where we concentrate an awful lot more, though we've got our good engineering, we concentrate an awful lot more on the rule and the procedure and the policy and the standard and the training of people. And we've got cameras at every corner that enforces the rule of the road. And so we're disciplined along the road, and our behaviours are disciplined that way. And of course, then we'll go to other countries who pray to God every day to look after their safety as well. And maybe that happens in every country. But there are different approaches. But the one that we're here today to talk about is the behaviours of people. And when we, again, those 5 words that make up culture, it's the behaviours, ultimately the behaviours of people, that determine whether a company is successful in safety or not. We can have good attitudes and competencies and values and perceptions, but ultimately it's the way that people behave. I have seen, witnessed the most competent, knowledgeable and skillful people in industry, knowing all there is to know about safety, but at times, for some strange reason, doing the wrong thing. And their behaviour ultimately ends up with their own injury or the injuries of many other people. The whole aim of creating a sound safety culture is to try to build in some reliability, some predictability, some compliance almost into the behaviours of people, especially in a high-risk industry, where one false move could mean the difference between a broken arm or even a disaster. And so concentrating around the culture and the behaviours of people is what my presentation is more about today than anything. Why people? Well, it is my belief that all of this subject is about people. Once upon a time, I quoted 98, 99. I'm as close to 100% as you can get. It is my belief that 100%, 99.9 recurring percentage of this whole subject is about people. Now to some people that's a challenge to accept that. But after all the years I spent in industry, I am pretty well convinced. I travel a different country and a different industry and a different culture every week, looking for that 0.001 that might be something else other than people. The only challenges I ever get to that statement are maybe one of two. One would be engineering. But how can you blame engineering when we designed it? We made it, we quality controlled it, sold it, we bought it, we transported it, we installed it, we used it, abused it, maintained it, or didn't. You cannot blame engineering. It's 100% about people. I say, is a forklift truck a dangerous piece of equipment? People say, yes, it is. I challenge that. Because a forklift truck, if it sits here out in the car park, all it will do is rust away. That's all that happens. Until when? Until somebody gets anywhere near it. They don't even have to get in the driving seat. I've known people who have serious accidents just tripping over the forks. And then we'll go in a different direction. The other challenge that comes to my 100% would be the act of God and the freak of nature. And I say, well, give me an example. And they'll say, earthquake. I say, well, can you blame earthquakes in Japan? Can you blame earthquakes in San Francisco? Or in Istanbul? Places where earthquakes have been living there for millions of years. Very difficult to blame them because we choose to live in those places. We choose to build buildings. We choose to operate industry, whatever it might be. But you cannot blame earthquakes because that's where they live, in those places. We choose. And you can't blame hurricanes here on the Gulf of Mexico because I'm sure they've been living here for millions of years as well. And how long have people been building and rebuilding their houses and choosing to live and spend their lives in these places? In the same way that it's difficult to blame lightning from black sky because that's where it lives and we choose. And you can't blame high pressure oil and gas in the strata below the Earth's crust because that high pressure oil and gas would happily have stayed there, but we chose to go and drill for it. Very, very difficult to blame it when it suddenly decides to burst up through our drill string and explode in the atmosphere. So these two challenges, I find them very difficult to accept that they would make up even the most fraction of a percentage. Maybe the lightning from blue sky and a meteorite, but they're very, very rare, and I can hardly think they'd make much of a difference on 100%. So, as far as I'm concerned, this whole subject's about people. Every last little drop of it. So why not then create this great culture that's based upon people's competence and attitudes, ultimately ending up with the finest of behaviours in a workplace? Well, the challenge is great. There are many obstacles. There are barriers to this whole subject of getting people to behave in the right way. The three main ones, the three that I've certainly have discovered in my working life, and let me take you through them. The first one I really came very clear to me was 16 years ago. I left the mining industry. The first job I got was working for a zoo company. They had 2 zoos. They'd lost 3 people with tigers and 2 with elephant. And the government were going to take away their license to operate, and the reason they'd invited me was to help them put some sort of structure to help them create some sort of safety culture within that organisation. Fantastic zoos. The well-being and mental physical health of their wild animals was superb, but the safety of their people was not good. But the story I want to tell you was, one evening sat with a man called Nick Marks. He was the head keeper of tigers, a man of my own age. He'd run away from home and school when he was 15, joined the zoo, worked with tigers, hands-on, all his life. And he convinced me, one evening, that tigers are far more predictable in their behaviour than human beings, far more predictable. He said a tiger, you can tell from what time of day it is, how it will behave. If the weather changes, how it will change. What it's doing now, what it will do next. He said you can read them like a book. Very predictable in their behaviours. He said far more predictable than human beings. And then he said, and you've got human beings walking around loose in your workplace. Very unpredictable people. In fact, I remember in that evening saying that it would be far better at the zoo if you could put the people in the cages and have the animals walking outside. They'd be far more easy to manage. So we're unpredictable. Second problem. We're not naturally safe. You consider a shelf on that wall and some sweets and a baby on the floor. What will the baby do? It'll climb. Maybe halfway it falls, bumps, bruises, cries, but the baby's okay. What does it do next? Climb again. And again. Because we are no way, shape or form born safe. It is not natural to us. It is not inbuilt. Safety is not innate. What is natural? From the first minute we take our first breath, what is natural is risk. We are born, bred, innate, built in risk takers. It is the only way we got out of caves, the only way we climb mountains, ski down the other side with planks of wood on our feet, frighten ourselves to death, get on the lift, go back and have another go. It is the only way we flew the first aeroplanes, only way you got to the moon. It's the only way that people drill for high pressure oil and gas with 20% H2S. Because we are born, bred, innate risk takers. Natural to us, it is the only way that civilization advances. By pushing the boundaries, by going to places and doing things that we've never done before and never know whether it's going to be successful or not, but we will do it because it is the only way that in the future civilization will survive. But apart from risk being natural, we are also rewarded for it. You imagine driving home tonight. If you drive home taking risk, what is your reward? You get home early. Your dinner is not burned. The family are happy to see you. The football did not start on TV yet. More time to rest, more time to do the things that you want to do. What about the rewards that you get as you are driving and taking risk? Can you imagine the rewards then? Just in the car. Putting your foot down and launching out onto the highway in front of that crowd of traffic that's coming, and you get in front of them. And the adrenaline is coursing through your system. Overtaking the man in the Porsche and feeling that you're winning the race. And going through those traffic lights on a sort of an orangey red colour, and you're away and he's behind you. And you got home early. And all those rewards that come from taking risk. And risk which is natural to us. And remember, we're not naturally safe. Now, can anybody tell me what is the reward of safety? And I would imagine you out there now are working very hard to find the answer to that question. Some people will say life. I'm sorry, no. Safety does not give you life.